What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. I am doing this video again because I definitely did not like how it went the last time with all of the noise and all of the distractions. Plus, my audio was not mono audio, so it was coming through only one side of my speakers, which sounded pretty weird. Although I did release the video, just as guide. However, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do it again just so that we can do it the right way. Change my OBS settings, so it should work the way it is or it was intended to work. All right, so today we are just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. Now, what I'm bringing to you guys here today is pretty controversial type of video. Most times I've went around a lot. When I'm telling you a lot, I've dove around a lot looking for the best settings for Microsoft Flight Simulator, because a lot of the times I had a lot of stuttering in my on my system. My computer was stuttering, it was just lagging. I had issues with my CPU being, blasted to 100% of my 100% for the entire flight and still getting stutters. My GPU was just lagging behind, overheating issues, a lot of pretty bad issues. Although that is still the case for me at times, but there are under specific situations, or conditions, I should say. For example, I own GSX, and I would suggest to anyone who owns GSX on an i5 processor. If you look at my system right now, I am running an Intel Core i5 7400, the Kaby Lake version, which is, a pretty older build. It's a 6th gen Intel processor on the LGA 1151 socket. Um, that in and of itself, we only have 4 cores and 4 threads, which means that we don't have hyper-threading enabled. We don't have much CPU overhead for performing the way that it needs to perform. Um, we do have our Nvidia graphics card here. It's going to be an Nvidia GeForce GTX 980, and this is the SOTAC version of the GTX 980. If we take a look at my GPU Z here, when it pops up, we are running an Nvidia card. It's an original Nvidia card. It's not from some Chinese manufacturer or anything. We are running you know Nvidia GeForce GTX 980. This is the Zotac version. This is the AMP version of it, which means that it's slightly overclocked by about 5 or 3% or something like that. I bought this for about $90 when I should have bought an RX 580. It was bad choices. I did not know at the time. I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and purchase an Nvidia card because everyone was just screaming Nvidia. And I was just a fool. I did not know at the time, but it does perform well. Although it's 4 GB, it does perform well. Um, and I will show you when I go ahead and load up into my sim so that you can see what performance that I have. Now, a lot of the times I followed every tutorial there is. I went through everything. I did things that I'm not supposed to even do. Including using the frame gen mod. I've attempted that knowing that it won't work for me. I've attempted using auto FPS, which it did work in specific situations. It will work, but I am not using lossless scaling right now, mainly because um, I have not gone through testing the system with the setup that I have. When I'm done, I will test out lossless scaling and then bring out a video to show you guys how it works and how it operated with my system. Now, um, I have tested auto FPS, and auto FPS did work perfectly fine for me, because it did great, but that was before I found, this holy grail, so to speak, of settings for Microsoft Flight Simulator, especially for persons who are on GTX cards or RX 580 cards, i5s and i7s that don't have the overhead that, some things like the i9s have. Or someone with an RTX card has. Um, Obviously, we are not going to be getting RTX performance out of it where, you get 90 to 100 FPS or, something like that. A lot of the times I see persons, running with i9s and RTX cards that are 30, 20, and 40 series come back and create videos like this saying, hey, for your low specs performance system, this is exactly what you need to do when you have never been down here. So what are you talking about, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in to show you guys the first thing that you are going to need to do to ensure that, your system is fully set up in the way that it needs to follow, to get this type of performance out of your system. Now, I won't be biased and tell you, hey, just crank everything up and just do this. However, that is what it involves, right? Now, one of the main things that we are going to need to do is we are going to need to go into our system settings here. I'm not going to tell you change your graphics settings. You can change this, but I'm sure that you've heard this already, so you have done it already, so it makes no sense that I send you here. However, I am going to go ahead and take you into your settings. You're going to go to system settings right here where you click here. If you're using Windows 10, you go to your um, control panel, or your, yeah, you should be able to go on your control panel to get your PC about specifications. You're going to go here. If you're using Windows 11, most of us are on Windows 11, you're going to go to your advanced system settings. If you notice, Intel Core i5 7400 CPU at 3 gigahertz, that's its base clock speed, goes up to 3.4. It's pretty slow, and it really does do nothing good for me. Well, it does. Trust me, it does. And you're going to go to your advanced system settings here. Now, in the performance tab, if you notice, this is my performance tab. I let Windows choose what's best for me, but this is not where we're going to go. We're going to go to the advanced tab, and you see where it says here, virtual memory. This is gonna be a portion of your hard disk space that your um, computer will use as if it was physical RAM. Now, I would suggest the only time that you use this, don't use this on something like a regular hard disk drive, because I've tested it already. It is slow as hell, and you will end up running into crashes, especially if you're running the settings that I am going to be running. You have to have virtual memory turned on an SSD. You need something around 14 gigabytes. I would suggest putting it to the same size as the amount of memory that you have in your PC at this time. Granted, if you have something like 32 gigs, you typically don't need this, because I have not seen a time where you will be using 32 gigabytes of storage space. However, persons that are on certain things like 16 gigabytes or less than 16 gigs, which I don't think you should even be on less than 16 gigs for you to run Microsoft Flight Simulator. But if to each his own, you want to run Flight Simulator, that's what you got to do. You got to ensure that you have your page and file size set. I have this set to my folder down here, which is my this page file size here. I give it a lot of space in order for it to work. Those are, my SSDs that I use for this. Now I have two regular drives in here, and I have two regular hard drives in here that I use for installing other games, and I have a community folder in there because I have two community folders that I link using add-on linker. I have one on an SSD where I have the largest community folder, which is majority of my community folder, things that I use more often, places that I fly into, airports that I fly into, to ensure that my computer does access them quickly, or the sim accesses them pretty quickly, I have to have it on an SSD. Places that I don't fly to pretty often, and I fly into like once every, 5 days, or once every month or so, I will have them on my regular hard disk. Things that are you know, not useful to me really, or some things like a large mesh or something like that. Okay, so now that you do have your page file size set up, what you are going to go ahead and do is, I'm going to show you my Nvidia control panel. If you notice that I do have a driver update, I'm not going to do the driver update. It's not useful to me personally, and I'm just going to go ahead and push through. Now, if you notice, my system settings are basically stock. I just restored it. The only thing that I did change is going to be the power management mode. This is something that I saw is a good balance between, the system drawing power and the performance. While you are asleep, it makes no sense you have this running at full or max power mode. When I use my computer on a regular day, um, when I use my computer on a regular day, I will be using, especially if I run my sim for the entire day, I'll be using like $8 per day for mine. I think it's going to be less for you guys. But we're in the Eastern Caribbean. I'm not going to get into it, but it does use up a decent amount of power. So I keep it in adaptive mode. That way I don't always am using the full power or the maximum power of this system, which means that my graphics card does, live a little bit longer, if it is able to manage its own power instead of just dumping a whole bunch of power into it. It's counterintuitive. It makes no sense you do that. A lot of these stuff here, you don't need to change them. They're not useful. I would just not suggest changing anything else in here if you are on my type of system, because anything else inside of here, you need RTX card, you need something that has a lot more memory to run this. If you're on something like a 1080, you can maybe go ahead and make some adjustments here. I have not had the 1080, so I cannot tell you, but I have been on the GTX 980 for a while, and I know how it runs. So nothing else to do here, nothing else to change here. It makes no sense. Don't do anything. Leave it as is. Now, seeing that we're out of here, the next thing that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk about the controversy beyond the GSX. Now, GSX, although it's an awesome program, it's not gonna be the whole shebang. Yeah, it's an awesome program. I love it. However, when I used it, I experienced a lot of stuttering because GSX on a whole is using a lot out of your CPU. That means that you have your CPU trying to push instructions, seeing that your CPU is basically what runs computational performance or computations for um, where everything is gonna go. Like, GSX says, hey, let's get them to walk down here, walk here, go here. You gotta go here, move here, put this here, put that there. Your CPU has to run all of that, right? And at the time, your GPU is doing nothing except, rendering all of this types of information, and your GPU load is gonna be low. I understand, some persons may have bought it and be like, oh, I want to use it. Wait until you get an i7. That's the best time for it, not on an i5. If you have an i7, go ahead, but you gotta, ensure that everything is, in the right. Now, with GSX being, you know, it's a large program. It's about 10 gigabytes of data. I've deactivated, I've deactivated my jetways. I've deactivated, like, my world, my GSX world, and I still experience stuttering, where every time I come to approach to land at an airport, I would experience stuttering because then GSX is about to load up. Once I go around and I climb out, GSX stops loading because it's like, okay, he's not coming here. And then when I come back in again, it does the same shit. So that creates, unnecessary load on my CPU that I don't need, and it is gonna be unnecessary load for you guys as well. I would suggest, for the life of you, go ahead and, disable your GSX Pro. I understand we want to have ground services. If you want to have it on, you can turn it on. However, I would suggest, unlinking it so that it's, whenever you're flying, or if you're going to be taking photos, or you want to do some from a video or something to show off or something like that, you can turn it on. However, it's highly unsuggested by me that you go ahead and use it on this type of system. On my type of system, i5. If you're on an i7, you can attempt to do it. Again, I'm not going to let you not go ahead and use it. If you pay for it, go ahead and use it. But this is going to be a limiting factor for you. Whenever you think about hopping in and using your sim, you are going to experience some form of performance loss, okay? Um, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up the sim. I'm gonna get into the sim and show you guys exactly um, what my settings are gonna be like and what the performance is gonna be like in my sim. I'll get back to you guys once we're loaded up in the sim, and by the power of video editing, we should get there a lot faster than it takes to load up the sim. I mean, it doesn't take that long, but we're gonna hop into the sim right now and get in there. We'll see you. Alrighty guys, so now that we are in the sim, I'm just gonna go ahead and show you guys the settings that I have, what I suggest for you, and how you should, and what everyone, or what the forum said that you need to do. Okay, so now that we're in, I'm gonna explain a few things here. I am in windowed mode because I do look at my charts and everything. I only have one monitor, so I cannot swap through and bump through as easily as you guys may have, like, 2 or 3 monitors. I'm using anti-aliasing TAA. Unless you are, I'm gonna explain this, unless you are gonna use AMD FSR, DirectX 11 is where you're gonna be at as per the forums. You don't want to go up to DirectX 12 unless you're using an RTX card where you want to use the frame gen mod. If you have an RTX card, you can go up to DirectX 12, and then you can swap over to the Nvidia DLSS or the AMD FSR2 to use the frame gen mod. My render scaling, as you see, my monitor is 1680 by 1050, 1680 by 979. I can maybe bump this up a little bit, but I'm not going to, because it's going to strain my GPU a little bit. AMD Fidelity Effects Sharpening, I've turned that down to 0 because I don't see a noticeable difference between both. Maybe it does, maybe, but I don't see it on my monitor. I have VSync turned off, and I have Nvidia Reflex low latency to on and boost. This helps, a lot, because when I did not have it turned on, it was there was a latency, and I could see that. I did see it. So turning it on to boost, if you have an Nvidia card, it will help you out greatly. Now with VSync off, you're not gonna get the frame time limit, or HDR10 is not available unless you have an HDR10 monitor, or you have this to DirectX 12. I don't need it, so I don't use it. The 2 heaviest hitters to your and these aren't the only 2, there are more, but the 2 heaviest hitters to your CPU usage is going to be your terrain level of detail and your objects level of detail. These 2 are taxing and demanding on your system, so unless you have an i7, I would say, or above, using an i5 to run the sim, you are going to need to use these settings. Now, what my settings do, it's a unique balance that I found, where my GPU is in a constant state of operating at a certain performance, and it's always in the rolling state. So every time instructions are sent to the GPU, it's always ready. Okay. Most times whenever you run, you always have your CPU running at 100%. Right now I believe my own is running at 100%. You won't be able to see it here. Right now it's running at about 90% with my GPU running about 42%, just sitting on the home screen here. That means that my GPU is in its rolling state waiting for instructions from the CPU, and the CPU is still sending instructions, letting it know that, hey, we have work to do. Okay, so first of all, your terrain level of detail, keep that to 50. That's where you're gonna start from, and you're gonna roll up as you go to get that unique balance. But I found that this works fine for me. The other thing that you can do is use the auto FPS mod. That way you can always have the auto FPS work on adjusting your object level of detail and your terrain level of detail as you go through. It works very well, and it is a big help to you if you want to get that unique balance of, if you are getting high frames, it will adjust these to match and make it look beautiful the way that it should. Okay, our off-screen terrain pre-caching, that is one of the things that we are going to be using. We are going to have it set up to ultra right now, ultra setting, because off-screen terrain pre-caching, what that means is anything that you don't see on your screen, like if you're looking straight ahead, what's on your right and on your left, you are not seeing these, and these are not being cached. If you have this turned down, anything lower than high, it is not going to be cached. That means that if you turn your head right or left, you are going to experience stuttering. You will experience it from the initial moving right to left. However, after moving right to left, there will be a time when it just will be non-existent. You can look left and right all you please, and it will be cached. So that means that that information is always cached to your RAM, where your CPU is able to send the instruction, or your GPU is able to access and render that frame before you look at it. That way there is no stuttering, and it does not have to send the instruction. We are trying to limit the amount of times instructions are sent to your GPU from your CPU, and the amount of time that your CPU has to spend sending instructions over to your GPU. That's what we are trying to eliminate, and that's the purpose of this. Okay, terrain vector data, this is just be able to see things like shores, lakes, those types of good stuff. I keep that at high. I can put it up to ultra. I had it up to ultra, and I did not see a noticeable difference between high and ultra. So you can choose to keep it up at ultra or high. For buildings, you keep that down at medium. As per the forums, you keep it at medium. It makes no sense to bring it up higher. It's procedurally generated buildings. That's like FSX talk for we know there's supposed to be something there, or even if it looks remotely like a building, we just put something there. That's what it is. It makes no sense you have a building out in the boonies in the middle of nowhere looking like a big building when it's not supposed to. It's not a building. Okay, so trees and grass and bushes, I have these set to high. These do not impact your CPU performance at all, so you can keep this up to high, or you can switch it up to ultra. That's up to you, but remember, this is gonna put load on your GPU, which we're gonna have to keep it in a stable balance. Okay, volumetric clouds, we keep that to ultra, because anything below ultra and high are gonna look like mush, and I would suggest not having any mashed potatoes in your shots. Okay, texture resolution, I set that to medium. I've tested it up on high and ultra. It does put a lot of load on your GPU for the texture resolution, where it bumps the resolution up. If you are to go up on texture resolution, I would suggest going up to high or just keeping it at medium. Okay, anisotropic filtering and texture super sampling, these two go hand in hand. 16 times and 6x6, you keep these settings there. There was, as per what I read, there was no noticeable impact to performance with using these two at that point. Texture synthesis, you keep that at ultra, because that's where you're gonna get these unique and these beautiful textures. You can see every little seam, you can see each little thread from the cloth thread, the fibers, everything. Keep that at ultra. This is handled by your GPU, and it is rendered once the GPU knows it knows where it is. It's gonna render that frame. You don't need to worry about it. Water and waves, these I keep these down to medium. It makes no sense keeping it higher. There's nothing that you are going to see unless you're a bush pilot that flies and you do seaplane landings a lot. You can maybe turn this up, but that can be done as a need to basis. Okay, here we go to shadow maps and terrain shadows. These are up to 1024 and 512. I keep these at 1 megabyte and half a megabyte of data. That way, you know, that's its resolution. That's the resolution of the shadows. That way it looks good, but does not break down. Anything below that is going to break down your image. Contact shadows, that's shadows that are contacting your aircraft, or you know, your aircraft is casting upon other objects. These are going to be set to high because you want your shadows to look good. You want your sim to look good, and it will look good once you have these turned on. Windshield effects, this is rain, snow, icing, and that's the most part for it. You want these set to ultra because you want to make it, you want your sim, again, you want your sim to look good with, you know, putting as little of impact to your system as possible. Ambient occlusion, that is for me set to high. That's ambient shadows. You can keep these up to high. Cube map reflections, those are just going to be the reflections that are popping off of your from you. I will show it to you, but it's from your cockpit. Those are the reflections that you see out, like, you know, the window. You can see the reflection of either a tablet or your displays off in your windshield, or whenever you turn around, you move around, you can see that. Those are set to 256. That's the highest it is gonna be at. It will look blurry if you have it anything lower. Ray marged reflections, that is a difficult thing for me to say with my heavy tongue. We have that at ultra. These are reflections like the cloud reflections, tree reflections, and building reflections in the water, and all or any water surface. Okay. Light shafts, we have that to ultra. I have not seen a significant performance dip with these on. Ultra. Bloom is set to on. Depth of field is set to high. I like my high depth of field. Motion blur is controversial. Some people say turn it off. I say keep it on. It masks the stutter, and it keeps it smooth. Okay, so it blurs the image. That way it breaks down the image. So it does not cause you to have this crisp image always being shown. And let's be honest, when you move your head in real life, you do have motion blur. Your eyes do induce motion blur automatically, so why not let it look realistic? Let's go. Lens correction, I have that turned off. Lens flare is on, and glass cockpit refresh rate. This is important for aircrafts that do have glass cockpits, G1000, G3000s, the GTN 750, and also the Airbuses, Boeings, you know, those that have the glass cockpit. That increases the refresh rate of those glass engine displays, and the PFDs, the MFDs, the ICASs. This will allow for the refresh rate of these to be pretty high, so it looks a lot smoother. So I would suggest having that up to high. Another thing that you are gonna, you know, be a little bit concerned about, but you are going to need to turn it down, is gonna be traffic. Traffic is something else that does affect your CPU performance. I will let you know it does affect your CPU performance very, very high. Okay, basically what happens is your CPU is what handles the instructions for everything, each traffic, every worker, every ground aircraft and airport vehicle. It has to calculate everything for these, including where they're going, how they're going, what speed they're going, their altitude, what path they are going to take, all these are being calculated by your CPU while it's sending instructions to your GPU for processing or rendering frames. This is something that you have to be on and always on top of, okay? So this, you are going to turn everything down to 0, okay? Leisure boats, you can maybe turn leisure boats on. However, this is still gonna affect your CPU. If you see stutters with this, you gotta turn it down. If you're not stuttering with any of these, you can, turn this up. This is basically you being able to see things like large ships and so on, trotting away on the ocean. I think Microsoft does use some form of AI that, you know calculates where they're going to be at all times, and their pathways. I'm not sure. That's just how it is. Now, fauna density, I've kept this up to 100%, because the fauna is randomly generated, and it's generated in specific areas. Sometimes you may see, sometimes you may not see, but it's there, and the fauna does not do have any impact on your CPU performance at all. All the other settings here, you can decide to turn them on and off. I have these generic airplanes turned off. You know, this is where we are gonna keep it. See, reduce memory and CPU load. I mean, you can turn these on. I have turned it off because I sometimes use FSTL traffic on VATSIM. I do fly on VATSIM, and whenever I fly on VATSIM, that's the only time that you do see traffic and so on. But it's not as bad, okay? Now, data. This is something that you are gonna have to decide if you want to do or not. This is my personal preference. I have my online functionality, I have Bing Data World Graphics, and I have photogrammetry turned on. Now, if you are experiencing stutters or when you're flying into different airports, turn photogrammetry off. That way, it will only generate the Bing Data World Graphics. And the Bing Data World Graphics is actually pretty good, especially if you use the Bing Maps mod. Island Sim Pilot has showcased this on his channel. I would definitely suggest visiting his channel to see or to get a deeper dive into that Bing Data World Graphics, or the Bing Maps mod, my apologies. That way you can have your scenery look immaculate, right? Now, one thing about the Bing Maps mod that you need to be aware of is you don't need to run the Bing Maps mod every single time. That's something that I brought up to Island Sim Pilot, and we do agree on it. You don't need to have the Bing Maps mod running all the time. I don't have the Bing Maps mod running all the time in the background. What I do is I run the Bing Maps mod, I load up a flight, I do a short flight in the Caribbean from one end to the next. That gives it enough time to download all the maps, download all the data, and update the Bing Maps. And then when you close off your sim, close the Bing Maps mod, you reopen your sim, the server is going to remain the same with the updated information, and as you fly, it will download and update the information as it goes along. So you don't have to worry about it messing up your scenery or it messing up your textures. It will remain the same, okay? Rolling cache and manual caches. I have these turned on because I don't want, while Microsoft is having some nonsense with their servers, for it to be attempted to download my data and it cannot. I have my manual cache turned on, so I have downloaded huge areas of scenery, and I have localized these to a specific drive so that it allows it to be downloaded, okay? My rolling cache, I have it set to 10 gigs. I had it set to 18 gigabytes. However, after I reset it, it turned down. I never changed. I think it went down to 8 and I changed it to 10. That's because I was running out of space on my local disk where my flight sim is. I have to delete a few things. I will do it. Don't worry, it'll come. It'll get there. Now, my manual cache, I am gonna keep this, you're gonna have to keep this on. It saves you a lot of download time and it saves you a lot of updates. So just keep this on. I would suggest while doing the manual caching, you have the Bing Maps mod running, so the most up-to-date information is always in your system at all times, okay? Now, another thing I've seen a lot of persons do have off is low power mode. Keep on low power mode, turn it on, because it prevents, these people walking around here, which uses CPU load. Although it's on the menu or in your menu screen, it's fine. I mean, you can keep it on if you like. If it does look good for you, you can. I turned it on and I just turned it off. I honestly don't like seeing too much things going on in my background here. Okay, so now we're gonna hop into a flight in the Cirrus Vision Jet. We're gonna depart out of Dominica, and I'm gonna show you the performance that you get. I'm gonna do a takeoff. I'm gonna circle and come back and land on runway 09. So we're departing out of runway 09. We're gonna enter the pattern, and we are gonna come back for a left-hand traffic into runway 09, and we are gonna be landing at Dominica to showcase the aircraft taking off and landing at the airport with no stutters, and also with no takeoff stutters nor landing stutters. So these are things that you are gonna see, and I'm gonna showcase what it looks like, okay? So I'm gonna hop into the sim right now, and you are gonna see what it looks like, okay? So it's gonna be loading up in a sec, and I know this is gonna be, again, a pretty long video showcasing a lot of the things that are gonna go on in the background. If you notice that this is loading up pretty quickly, again, I am running GTX 980, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, nothing too special, an Intel Core i5 processor on the LGA 1151 socket, which is a 6th gen Intel build, not the newest build. This is a low specs build. This is a budget gaming PC, and I mean, like, it's really balling on a budget, and I am getting that type of performance. So if you experience the same type of performance, hit a like on the video, subscribe to this video so that we can share a lot more performance updates, and for me to be able to show you guys certain issues that you may run into as a low specs gamer, certain deals on a lot of different things whenever there are deals, things that you can purchase so that you can increase your performance in the sim while we have this going. Okay, so right now I'm just gonna wait for this to load up, and once it loads up, we're gonna go ahead and take a flight. One moment, guys. Guys, so we are loaded up in the sim with the beautiful Cirrus Vision Jet. I think some of the things that I wanted to show you guys have already been loaded up, but I'm running FSR or FS Realistic, sorry, FS Realistic Pro. I'm running our Flow Pro as well. I've got a lot of things here being run. This is why I don't use GSX, because I do have Toolbar Pushback Pro from Aerosoft or from FS2 Crew. I think it's one of these. Aerosoft, yeah. And I also have Camp Out utilities installed. I do have SimFX. I do have RAS Pro installed, and the GTN 750. Okay, and also our Flow Pro and everything. If you notice, if I swap here, I'll go into Flow Pro. That's why it takes a little second for it to load up. Now that we are in the sim, I'm gonna move to my left. If it does not lag, then that's fine, but if it does, this is what the off-screen terrain pre-caching is. Like, we go here, there you go, there's a stutter. What's gonna happen is right now my system, my system is basically caching the scenery here off on my left side into my RAM. Now I'm gonna go to the right. You see there's a little stutter. There you go. So now that means that it's completely loaded in. So I'm gonna stop a second, and I'm gonna turn my head to the left and to the right again, and you're gonna see that it's not gonna have the stutter. Quick, to prevent me from having to say, okay, but I'm moving slow. I'm moving fast. Here we go. Fast. Here we go. no stuttering. That's what the off-screen terrain pre-caching does for you. It will reduce that stutter. You got to keep that up at ultra, so it helps with that. Now, if you notice, we have these trees don't look as high as they would normally with the default trees. I do have a tree height mod that was installed on my system, so my tree heights will be realistic. So instead of looking all the way up here, they are exactly where they are supposed to be. Um, a lot more realistic, and that employs for the entire world. So no matter where the trees are, there are going to be realistic tree heights. Now, we are going to do a short takeoff from Douglas Charles here in Dominica. We're going to do climb up to at least 1,800 feet. We're going to make a left-hand traffic pattern to follow the traffic pattern to enter left-hand pattern for runway 09, where we're going to be taking off on. And you are going to see the performance that I have in takeoff and also with the landing. I'm going to pull the brakes are off, and we are checking our altimeter, which is set 2994. A while ago, it was like 2992 when I recorded this. I had to re-record. So now we're going to increase our power, and we're going to wait for this to load up. There we go. Now we're going to put full power. I don't have I use my keyboard for this part. All right, takeoff thrust is set. We're off the brakes and we're rolling. We're going to be looking for 90 knots for the takeoff, for the rotate in this aircraft, because this aircraft's rotation speed is 90 knots. I usually go up to 100, so airspeed is alive. 80 knots is going to come up, cross-check. All right, so we got V1 here and rotate. All right, there we go. Nice little crosswind takeoff. Gears going up right now. That's a positive rate. And we got we're waiting for our yaw damper. There it is. So yaw dampening is turned on automatically here. And we're going into the climb. Now, I'm just going to switch on the autopilot for us to get our roll and pitch. And look at that. Let's switch our flaps to up. And beautiful. Look at how clean and look at how beautiful that looks. Do you see any noticeable difference in... I mean, come on. You have got to be, it's unreal. And look how realistic that looks. And this is with the Bing Maps mod installed. So now we're going to go ahead and follow our left-hand traffic pattern since we are coming up on 1800. So we're going to level out here. And then we're going to make our left-hand traffic pattern. Now my joystick is a little bit more finicky than a lot of you guys may have something like a better joystick, can afford something a lot better. But I only have like a Logitech X3D Pro, which is a very, lackluster joystick. So we're gonna go ahead and try to get over. We're gonna be doing a long turn out here. So we're going over Woodford Hill right now, and we're gonna enter into the traffic pattern. Usually we would enter it a lot closer in. I'm gonna trim down, so I'm gonna do a nose down trim so it does not rise up. So now we are cresting over the village of Wesley right now, and we're gonna pitch down. And there we go. We're entering our traffic pattern. Now we're gonna go to idle here, so that we could just bleed some of our speed off. And we do have some turbulence coming over this area. It is something that happens a lot of the times. All right, we're gonna go gear down because our extension speed is 210. We're doing 159, and we're gonna wait for our flap down speed, which is gonna be around 150 here. And it is coming along. We're not gonna drop yet. We're gonna wait until we hit down to a little bit lower 140s, but we are trying to lose altitude. There we go, lower 140s. We got first notch of flaps in, and we are curving this approach in the Vision Jet. Alright, so now we are going to keep it in. We got to look out for our angle of attack coming over these mountains because we will get into a stall condition. So now we're going to apply a bit of power. I'm going to drop the file. Oh, there you go. We got a little bit of turbulence. If you notice, this is motion that happens and there is still no stuttering. Look at that. Beautiful. So we're going to swing around and come in for that landing. We're at 100 knots. And we are bleeding off. We got to increase our speed for the turn because we do have wind coming around, 16 knots of wind. which is a little bit, out of spec because I'm right here right now and the wind does not feel that high. We are getting a little bit of downdraft